Well, it's been 5 years since, under President Nicolas Sarkozy, France became the first country in Europe to ban women from wearing the burqa. Now, according to some reports, this ban on facial coverings, well, apparently it's only made France's social divide worse. One man in particular, Rachid Nekaz, he's an Algerian businessman. Well, he has made it his mission to pay the fines of women violators in the name of their human rights. Now, he's already paid over 235,000 euros in penalties and fines, legal fees for women in France who choose to wear the burqa. Now in Belgium too, because Belgium has also introduced a similar law. So these women who choose to defy the laws in the name of their religion to wear the burqa, they can receive around $170 in, 170 euros in a fine as a ticket if they're seen out in public covering their face. I will say it's not just the burqa that's targeted. It's also anyone who covers their face with a mask, with a helmet even, a fully covered helmet if they're not actually riding their bike at the time, can be subject to a fine, 170 euros. This man, though, Algerian businessman, he basically said that he didn't think it's right. He thought it was a violation of human rights, and so he's been paying the fines for these women. Here's a quote from him on the matter. He said, "I don't support these women. I support their freedom to wear the clothing of their choice. If they choose freely to wear the niqab in a democracy, I think we should support these women even if we don't agree with their choice." Well, it's been 5 years since France introduced this ban on the burqa, 2011. Many people think it's just made things worse. It's just divided the country even more. Belgium now have also introduced a similar law. Obviously, we've seen attacks, terror attacks in France and Belgium. Some of those who traveled from France to Syria did come out and say that this law was one of those that also encouraged them to turn against France, to radicalize, to go to fight against France. Now, one of the reasons for introducing this ban on the burqa was that there's a principle in France, and it's called vivre ensemble, and it means living together. And this is a national French principle, and they basically said, lawmakers, that the burqa violated this principle of living together. Now, interestingly enough, people came out, critics came out and tried to argue the same thing in reverse. Vivre ensemble means living together. If you ban us from being able to wear what we need to wear for our religion in public, then obviously we can't live together. So they tried to turn it in advance. It went to the European Court of Human Rights. The European Court of Human Rights upheld the ban, said that France's argument on this certain idea of living together was legitimate. Obviously, it has caused some radicalization. I will say that even people on the Muslim side, though, not all of them agree that women should be wearing the burqa, because it's not necessarily just a question of religion. It's also a question of misogyny. So, it's the way women are treated, the way women are respected, the way women are allowed or not allowed to be free in public. But certainly, some women are very happy choosing to maintain their traditions and to cover up in public, but they're not allowed to do this in France.
Right. Well, I agree with what you just said a few sentences back, that the burqa represents, a lot of things that are the issue with a lot of religions, like misogyny, sexism, the belittling of women in general. I do agree with that, and for that reason I am against it. But at the same time, I do think that the way that France went around this problem, the way that they tried to deal with it, actually kind of made things worse. I don't think it's a good idea to just tell people, you're not allowed to wear something anymore. I don't think that's right? That's the kind of thing that would never pass here in the U.S., for example. The government stepping in and basically telling you what to wear. Oh, you want your man to tell you what to wear? No, this is France. You're free. You cannot wear that, right? So that doesn't really make sense in my opinion. But it's not just France. I mean, we've seen similar discussions in some predominantly Muslim countries as well, like Egypt, for example. Because remember, it's not just a Muslim thing. There's a lot of different ways to cover yourself, and it's more of a cultural thing than it is, for example, just a Muslim thing blanket across. So that's also very important to know.
Yeah, well, you also have to think about the money that's involved here. I mean, this man alone, he's paid around 235,000 euros in fines. In October, there were figures released by the Interior Ministry, and 1,623 stops were what were recorded back then. So the money involved as well is quite high, which also doesn't help to make things look good. And it does seem, in my opinion, like more of an evolution of the war on Islam, Islamophobia, which is something we're hearing a lot about, especially in France. And as we know, France has been potentially, we could argue, the biggest target of terror attacks since Charlie Hebdo and obviously the Bataclan in November of last year. And so you have to wonder, with steps like this that were introduced 5 years ago, whether these steps have led to France being perhaps responsible for what has then happened on their doorstep. You know, obviously the burqa, it is uniform. I'm not saying that all the women who choose to wear the burqa are wanting to wear it, but certainly I do not, in my personal opinion, think that the majority of Muslim women who do wear the burqa don't want to be wearing it. It's part of their tradition, it's part of their culture. Every different religion has some kind of a uniform, whether it's a yarmulke for a Jewish man, whether it's a nun's uniform or a monk's uniform. Yes, this is covering the face. Yes, we're in a time where there's terror attacks going on and it's a little bit scary for people to see someone fully covered walking down the street. I certainly, though, think that if you look at the last 5 years, it's just made the situation in France that much worse.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, you know, a valid concern. And at the same time, it's not just about, you know, empowering women. At the same time, there is a security element to this as well. I mean, we saw that in Belgium, for example, all of the suspects who were at the airport in the most recent attack were apprehended eventually because they did catch them on camera, right? So if they wanted to, they could have had women do the same thing and wear these burqas, and then we would not know who they are at all. So the same thing goes with the helmets and everything else. So there is a security aspect as well. But look, at the same time, I completely agree with you. I think it's wrong, but at the same time, telling somebody what they can and cannot wear, you're basically doing the exact same thing, right? You're forced to wear this. Oh, how about we force you never to be able to wear it? It's like, okay, we get what you're trying to do, but at the same time, you're also still taking away someone's power to choose.
Absolutely. Well, it's interesting to have a debate on a topic like this, because obviously it's very controversial. You have probably many Muslim women who would be wanting to wear the burqa, and many who are forced into it by their family, by their husbands, for example. So it's an interesting debate, but when you look at the larger consequences of what it has done to France over the last few years, and then most recently to Belgium, you have to wonder whether it is helping the situation or making it worse.